At AQA, we work with the UK's largest teacher network to shape the future of assessment. With teachers for students, we ask questions today that matter tomorrow.
Get a head start on your fresh start with Bloomsbury Education. With 30% off all our books till the end of September, this back-to-school sale is your chance to stock up on CPD titles, classroom resource banks, lesson ideas, and practical solutions to every teacher's pain points. Browse titles on sale from the Like a Ninja series, The Week Junior, and Let's Talk Picture Books. Perfect for the new school year. From leadership to inclusivity and maths to mental health, Bloomsbury Education has books for every step of your teaching journey. Welcome back to school at bloomsbury.com/back-to-school sale.
Over 7,500 primary schools are already using Capel Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to capelprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles.
Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday show with your host, Michael Wright. We were on the Saturday morning slot at 10:30, but we have moved the afternoon of 2:30. So I hope you're all having a wonderful day. And more importantly, I hope that the start of school has been good for all of you, or even at the best case, survived. You've survived the first week. So I am delighted to join for our guest here. I'm delighted, for Jen Hurst to be our guest for today. We will be talking about the extracurricular funding, the £88 million that the government has given us. Jen here and I will go into more details in regards to that. Jen, firstly, how are you doing today?
I'm very good after a quick return back to school. We've done 2 weeks already, Mike. It's been great. I'm doing very well. Glad to be back in the classroom.
Awesome stuff. It has been 2 weeks, although for me in particular, it feels a little bit like it's been 2 months. So with all the things that we've had to be rushing back into. So glad to hear that you're doing well. So yes, extracurricular funding, the £88 million that the government has promised UK education. They have made a big song and dance about this. They've made this as one of the core points, if you will, in terms of education strategy. And we're here to dissect it. We're here to discuss how it may look like in the education sector, what the money could be potentially used for. I know that the government have been really good in presenting all of the things it could be used for and highlighted a few areas, music and the arts being one of them, but they're also talking about digital, AI, sports. And as always with many of these things, I guess we're wondering how will this money be divided amongst the schools and the hubs across the country? And when the money should come to us, what do we do with it? How do we really sort it out, really? So we'll also be talking about the general role of extracurricular activities and the provision in education. We can talk about the differences between state school and independent schools, because they both have their means and their various ways of dividing the time and the expertise that we put into extracurricular as well. And we'll also perhaps be offering some advice and just in terms of what one could do with the funding. So not necessarily specific to arts. We'll try and make it as broad as possible to encourage all kinds of subjects in this one. So let's start with then £88 million. And according to the report, which I have in front of me from the Social Mobility Commission, chaired by Dame Martina Milburn. She is very, very keen. The money has been essentially, sort of money, but the need for the money, shall we say, has been put about because she understands that for too long, extracurricular provision has been non-existent in education, and it's time that the government and various education specialists put that right to benefit our students, really. According to the research in terms of the cliff notes that I have here, they've mentioned that extracurricular activities are important to young people and results in a range of positive outcomes. For I'm sure, Jen, you also know this, as teachers of music, we live and breathe in extracurricular. It's almost our, I don't know about you, but I think the lines between curricular and extracurricular kind of blur in a way, because I do so much of two, they almost become the same, don't they, really? Opportunities to take part in extracurricular activities are unequally distributed, and this is prior to the report that they put out, so they realize that there is a disparity between how the activities are used in this country. Employers in the UK labour market increasingly demand soft skills, and the word soft is something I would like to get into at some point, about what is deemed to be soft, and I guess by proxy hard skills in terms of education. These type of skills, which may be developed via extracurricular activities, could be an important factor in driving intergenerational social mobility. New programs and initiatives are required to widen opportunities to participate in extracurricular activities. That's great. So we'd like to obviously know whereabouts they are. So, Jen, what do you think about this from the report then? So the report highlighted by Dame Martina says that there are massive gaps and there are unequal distribution of where extracurricular in the UK currently resides. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think this necessarily true, or do you think it could be perhaps not necessarily an unequal, there could be maybe a rebalance or a rethink in terms of strategy?
Yeah, I think that one of the key things is about access to arts across the board. So, this funding is for music, art, drama and DT. So across those art subjects, I think it largely depends on staffing in schools. In order to be able to deliver a strong extracurricular provision, you need to have the physical human resource in the building to do that, right? So I think there's something to think about there, and how much one person can do, or a team of two even, which is still a small team, up to 4 or 5 people, depending on the setting of the school, is really going to impact the amount of provision, the quality of the provision potentially, and that offer to young people. So I think to answer that point, yes, I fully agree that there's a disparity in the provision across the board, depending on the school setting, and then depending upon the vision in that school. So, how much a head of subject wants to offer is really going to be backed up by the head teacher. If the head teacher's got that vision and is really supporting that head of department, there's a potential for, no matter how small or large the team, there's a potential for fantastic opportunities for young people. Obviously, we know, Mike, that in some settings there's a different focus away from the arts. We know the EBAC, and that's not what this show's about, but we know the impact that the EBAC has had over the last 5-6 years, however long it's been now. And so there is definitely a hole to be plugged potentially in terms of making this provision more equitable, but it's exciting once we've got a bit of a directive about how this the 22.5 million that's going to come from the 88 towards us. It's quite exciting to see what might be able to happen for those young people. There's so much to unpick. That's my first point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and hopefully we'll try and pick as much as we can in terms of this. Before we do go on, we do have a word from our wonderful sponsors here with Hatchet Learning. This show is brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development stay and visit www.hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. So very, very interesting points you've raised about subject specific. And yes, it also include in their STEM clubs as well. And whilst we're talking current as well, we're looking at digital thinking initiatives. And I would imagine a lot of these clubs, let's say when I started teaching mainstream in 2014, 2015, the landscape, if this came out, the landscape of extracurricular would be very much hands-on traditional subjects. So it would include STEM, but it had sports, it had the arts, and the money would go towards those clubs. But now we're in a digital realm. We're in the realm of AI. We are in the realm of coding. So we've got a completely different world that we need to think about. And the government, as much as they have been fantastic, and the noise around the arts in particular, which has been great. It's lovely to hear that as a music educator, that the government are being so forward facing in terms
Absolutely.
of the arts. One thinks about funding and perhaps the limitations that might be put upon us in terms of where the money goes. And I can't help but think that as much as our subjects, sports and whatnot would be benefiting from those, I can't but help think that perhaps at some point that money is going to be siphoned more towards these soft skills or these extra skills in relation to digital incentives, so in relation to coding, in relation to learning about AI. What are your thoughts on that? Are you as less cynical as me in terms of that, or do you think that actually there could be a more of an equity in terms of what's been distributed, and it could be just down to what the various local governments or the schools need?
I don't think that this is the time to shy away from AI. I think you need to embrace AI. I always call myself a late adopter, and I don't get on trends straight away. I tried with the emergence of AI to not stay away from it and to try and get on board with that a few years ago and try and keep up with the trend and try and embrace it, shall I say. So I do think from everything I see and what I'm experiencing, I do think it's essential for our young people to be up to speed with AI and to be up to speed with the way the world is moving, and to be able to compete when they leave school. They've got to compete in a modern world, an AI world, an internet-based world. They need to be fully on top of those skills. I just would say, so I'm not saying we shy away from it. And of course, there's a huge grey area and lots to think about in terms of how the world of AI is already impacting composers, how it's already impacting anyone doing digital art, anything like that, any creator and their IP. So there's all of that to think about, but the young people have to be prepared to be able to function and understand how it all works. So we need to skill them up, and we need to skill teachers up as well, equally. I would say that for me, until we have the directive, and this is the key thing really for me about the funding that's coming, until we have the directive of how that's going to be broken down, how it should be used, and how, for me, we're going to measure the impact of how it's been used, I think it's all speculative at the moment. What I would love to see is a good amount of that funding go into practical provision of practical creativity, not all focused on digital creativity. I think that's important. It's got its place, not shying away from that. But if we think about what we're currently looking at, we're looking at young people who cannot access instrumental lessons necessarily because of lack of funds. Everybody's trying to put their money in the right place. Families are trying to put their money in the right place, in the places that are a priority for them, and instrumental lessons might not be that. They might not be able to go to drama, extracurricular activities, theatre schools, all of those kinds of things. So just thinking about what we currently do, I'd love for us to be able to enhance that offer before we go off in a different direction. let's think about those small departments, those one-person departments, those people that are returning to teaching, need more confidence, those people who are new to the profession that just need a bolster and a bit of support, those people that need to get in touch with their partners in their local area. Let's make sure that the foundations of what we've already got is bolstered and that provision is enhanced. That, for me, is a starting point, along with developing the soft skills, along with developing the AI.
Yeah, well said. I absolutely agree with everything there, and I think I hadn't considered until you mentioned, but it's an incredibly valid point. The extracurricular funding that will go towards schools and education establishments will be imperative for single people departments. I'm a single person department here, so I'm trying to do, I'm trying to do my best impression of an octopus, keeping everything, all the plates spinning. But for single people departments, for new teachers, for teachers that need that help, I can see this extra funding to be, in many ways, it could be the difference between the department surviving and thriving. I can imagine departments going, the head has said, we've allocated X amount of money for these hours, we're going to pay for whatever it is. And then that means you've got this free time on your timetable to do X, Y, Z. Or you don't need to necessarily spend your time doing this after school. We're going to be hiring in a company to come in to take care of this. And all you need to do is just maybe monitor here and there as the teacher. So I remember we had a very good foundation in my first school set up by the head. And it was something that I spoke to him about and said, I'd love to do it, but I can't do it because, we're limited in terms of time and resources. And he did, and as far as I'm aware, it's still being set up and still being used. And it was great to get my students out of the classroom in terms of what they've learned and put it into real life skills. And you perhaps alluded to it, but I couldn't also help but think that this will absolutely benefit students who are on free school meals, SEND, and rural students as well. Students who don't have these opportunities to go and take, a tube a couple of stops into the Barbican to go to Royal Albert Hall or wherever it is. Schools who are an hour and a half drives away from the nearest city, and I can't but help also feel extracurricular, this funding will be a massive benefit, not only to their skills, but also think introduce a little bit of cultural capital, if you will. So introduce a little bit more to their education that they wouldn't have probably had access to during their normal education. What are your thoughts on that in terms of the benefits of this funding to do with students who are vulnerable, shall we say?
Yeah, I think students who are vulnerable, students who have additional needs, students who are financially disadvantaged do need, as has been spoken about for many years, Mike, the playing field to be levelled out somewhat. And I think that there's great potential for that with this. If I think back to the 2011 national plans, the first time around that we had a national plan, there were such fantastic programs set up. There were opportunities. I remember one of the things is that every school was supposed to have an orchestra. I don't think every school ever managed to have an orchestra, but more ensemble music making, fantastic. There was actual evidence of impact for all children. And for me, I think that, yes, we want to see more equitable opportunities for everybody. We need that because every other blog you look at, every other social media post you look at, people are talking about the fact that the arts now seems to be increasingly becoming the right of the privileged minority. So we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity. But the thing that was great about 2011 was that we saw the impact, and there was such a good period of time that followed that national plan where there was so much evidence of good practice happening. For me, the key thing, Mike, is that we're going to be able to measure impact. I mentioned it already, and I would love to know what other people listening to this think about that. I'd love to know, how do we feel that when we get this funding, so that at the end of the period of funding, we're not just talking about what we didn't manage to do, what didn't happen, which disadvantaged children didn't get an opportunity, how many schools didn't have adaptive instruments after the end of the period. It would be so good to think from the beginning about measuring the impact of it, not in a draconian way, but just in a sense of sharing successes, in a sense of measuring distance travelled and what that's looked and felt like for the young people, because that's what we all turn up at school for every day. That's what we're doing it for. So what does that look and feel like? What's the experience been for those young people, so they can tell their story? They can tell about the new instrumental lessons that they had. They can tell about their trip to the local performance venue. They can talk to us about why it was so fantastic to go and visit a university where music's on offer, and they wouldn't have thought about that before. Let it come from the young people, but I think we need to think from the beginning about how we're going to measure it and show it afterwards.
Yeah, again, it's spot on. It's implement, kind of let the dust settle, so to speak, gather the data, and then you can then look objectively of how much of a success it has been. I wasn't in mainstream and around about 2011, so I couldn't possibly comment on the success. However, I can comment on, as a student, the success in the early 2000s, when government, again, put a lot of money into outreach and extracurricular. More specifically, they put a lot of money into further education funding, and it's where I got my start. When I left school, I went to a very specific music college, which I credit for everything. If it wasn't for me going to that music college after school, when I left school, I don't know where I would be. I certainly wouldn't have had the career I've had. I certainly wouldn't have been able to become the teacher I am and the musician I am, and meet as many people as I've done. And it was all down to government initiatives which backed extracurricular outreach. That extra funding outside of the classroom was so important. But we're talking some 25 years ago. You know, the world has changed, the education has changed. And another point to mention, and this is probably, it seems to me as to one of the key points as to why the government has set this up. They've got lots of data on the amount of students who are spending too much time on devices. We don't need to go too much into that because we know of that. But you know, about the Children's Commissioner found there was 1/4 of children aged between 8 and 15 in England who spend 2 or 3 hours a day on a device with internet access. Another 20% spent over 3 to 4 hours a day on a device. 23% spent more than 4 hours. So I also feel like this funding and this initiatives that the government put in is also another way of trying to really reach out to students across the UK and to get them out of this device zone and to really break that chain. And dare I say, engage in some good old fashioned clubs and activities, you know, where you didn't have your phones or your devices. Gosh, I sound old. But you would go in and you would, like you said, you would go in and you would spend your time with other people, learning about skills. The social skills that one develops will be great. So, you know, I also think the government have another agenda, if you will, a good agenda, into trying to engage with students who they've found are spending far too much time on their devices. If they're going to be doing anything to do with the digital realm, then it would possibly make sense that if you're going to be on your device, then you might as well learn how to use your device in a productive way rather than consuming. So, yeah, so all brilliant points there, and I'm sure we could go more and more into these ones if we had more time. What you mentioned, we're looking at measuring the kind of the success of this. What about I'm thinking more about the immediate success to well-being and mental health. How do you feel? How do you feel about that, Jen? What do you
On
reckon?
the back of what you were just saying, that was the word that was in my head, was well-being. This has got huge ramifications, potentially positive ramifications for young people's well-being, um, or positive outcomes. Yeah, great. I remember the days as a young person myself of Jack Petchey funding allowing me to go to outbounds activities, to go camping, to go, doing crazy stuff in the snow and ice, sleeping out in tents in the snow. Um, Great opportunities to just get out and be in nature, fact find. We didn't have mobile phones in those days, probably the latter end of me doing all of that outward-bound stuff. But certainly when I started doing that, we didn't have phones and devices. You just had people. You just had your mates, and you stayed up with your torches, being silly, talking about nonsense, and then being really tired the next day when you've got to go out and do activities. Fantastic. And trying to team build and trying to build stuff and trying to climb up trees and do this, that, the next thing, and do crazy pampas poles, sliding down a zip line. Great, fantastic. Get young people out, as this is wider than music, this offer. Get young people out doing activities. That's what we want to see. Get them away from devices. I don't really believe that young people even particularly want to be stuck to these devices. They're just designed in such a way, as you say, there's lots of research out there, but they're designed in such a way that it becomes addictive. It's addictive enough for adults, right? So for young people whose brains are developing and their bodies are developing, they're battling against putting that device down. Get them out, get them talking to their friends, get them making new friends, socializing, because there's so much opportunity to just develop yourself as a person. Get them out doing something new, get them out recording a radio show, get them out going to the theatre, get them out going to see an art exhibition. All of these things can be done, and there's such great potential. That was the word I wanted really earlier. There's such great potential for young people and their well-being, and hopefully we then start to see a bit of a breakdown of these challenges that we have where, Mike, we're struggling to get young people into school. Mental health concerns are on the rise. Teachers and staff in school are doing their best to support young people around all of those additional needs. We may not be the experts. We try to do our best to work with families and support them, but I'm sure there's a benefit of putting the mobile phones down and getting into groups and doing fun stuff. Love to see it happening more.
Yeah, it would be great, wouldn't it? It would be absolutely wonderful to see a thriving club going in where you see young people just engaging in learning and doing, and more importantly, just growing as people and growing their characters.
Absolutely.
We've got another sponsored aspect on here. I mentioned it before, the wonderful Chalk and Talk podcast. I've listened to it a few times. It's absolutely wonderful. If you're looking for another education podcast, do check out Chalk and Talk with Anna Stoke. Anna is a passionate advocate for evidence-based math education for students of all ages. On her podcast, she talks about everything from teaching methods to how-to guides for teaching maths, facts, tips for evaluation, research shows claims. She really does bring on top-notch guests, educators, researchers, and policymakers, and discusses issues that directly impact teachers and students. Chalk and Talk is for anyone interested in education. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. So I was thinking about if I had the keys, so to speak, if I had this funding, what possibilities and what could I potentially do with the money? So if I'm ahead, or if I'm more closer to home, if I run a music hub and I've got all of this money, what opportunities and what do you think one could possibly do with this one in terms of specific activities? We're obviously mentioning about engagement, and the government are also tying it into digital infrastructure. So what kind of clubs and what kind of activities do you think are going to be really beneficial for the students to engage in extracurricular?
I think in terms of sort of being subject specific, you and I are both musicians. So anything that, as I've mentioned a few times, that involves group music making, ensemble music making is really important. Anything that encourages creativity, so to go outside of music, you know, opportunities for students to develop improvisation skills through acting, opportunities for young people to do creative, I don't know, any form of creative fine art, but something that might look different. It might be Islamic art, it might be origami, it might be, I don't know what it is, but something that is an art form in the sense of fine art that isn't what they'd normally do. It could be mask making, it could be using clay. In terms of DT, gosh, the amount of things that you could make. But for me, it's just something that allows them to sit with, I would say, with peers in a, I think there's importance of formal extracurricular activities, but there's also an important place for fun, relaxed opportunities to try something out as a new person, just to try it out, something you've never done before. That is something that would be great to see. As well, I think we need to think about, I broke it down into a few different areas. So access, as we've mentioned, being equitable. I want to see these programs being driven when we do get this funding, and when we do get a bit of a directive about what's got to happen. I want to see the funding being, the decision making being sort of like driven by teachers as well, alongside their head teacher, alongside their school leaders. But I think the teachers working alongside the children are the ones that know, and they're the specialists in their area, so they know where the gaps are. There's got to be something that comes from the teachers. I just don't want it to be something that's just they're directed to do, or as you said right at the beginning, that the money's siphoned off to go elsewhere. There's got to be some element of decision making from the teachers, support from external specialists, I think we've mentioned, ensuring, as you've said, that the opportunities are inclusive of all young people. So there's a few things that need to happen. And then thinking about technology, it may not be just the relevance of AI, but within each discipline, there's something to think about in terms of technology and how that's relevant in the future of technology in your subject area. So teachers, get thinking about what could enhance your current offer, because I think that's what this is all about. It's about identifying the gaps, identifying the need, and then having those conversations with school leaders to make sure that the gaps are closed, and identifying the young people that you want to benefit from it as well. That's going to look different in every school. I'm not going to sit and say that it's only one group of young people who need to benefit, but I think within each setting, looking at the data should tell you very clearly who your underachieving groups are, who the ones that don't get to currently participate in activities are, and those are the ones that you want to start with, whether you're a rural school, whether you're an inner city school. Because you mentioned before about going out to venues. It's not only the going out, sometimes it's coming back. If you're in the inner city and you've got to come back from a venue really late, you need to have a safe way to get home, right? So it's thinking about putting on additional transportation, all of these things. But within those schools, I feel that it needs to be teacher-led. Teachers are going to know where the gaps are.
Yeah, you're right. And you know what, also as well, transportation, so the money will have to go to getting students safely to and from the venue. But also, another thing that popped to mind is actually the people running the extracurricular activities. I think we are naturally going to be fixated towards the actual clubs and the activities, but we also need to consider that people running these clubs also need to be paid as well, and it can't be just done. Yeah, it can't be done on good. It can't be done on good faith. You know, you mentioned it. Yeah, we're getting with specialists. We need specialists to be running these clubs, and you need people who are experts in their field, who know exactly what to do with their subjects. So if this money is going towards the setup, but we're not actually putting the money into the hands of the experts, we're going to find, I imagine we'd find a massive issue with trying to get people running these clubs. You know, if we're going to be underselling people, to say, oh, you can do it for X amount, they're like, well, no, I can't actually, because this is my job, this is my expertise. So I think the money also, the budgeting needs to be considered for various things, and also the longevity of these clubs. It could well be that the money that is going to be brought to us not only starts new clubs, but also means that various other clubs and activities are still able to go on. That 22.5 million this year could be the difference between someone saying, I can't run it because I can't afford the overheads or can't afford the staff, to, do you know what, we can run it for an extra 3 years now because we've got the secured funding. So I think that's really, really, really important to consider as well, that the people running these. There was another point. There's another point you mentioned about the word soft, and I wanted to come back to that. It's something, I guess, as musicians, we hear quite a lot in terms of our subject, music being a soft skill, so to speak. And I just think also with these extracurricular clubs is that we don't get too careful in just siphoning them off as, oh, well, my student's just going to do that for an hour and a half, and that means I can go and do whatever. There's merit in there. Certainly I also tie in sports as well. I think running these extracurricular activities in many ways, I see them as the core learning of any subject. Maybe my opinion is different from others who are listening, but sitting in an orchestra, sitting in an ensemble, singing in a choir, being at a desk working with some music program is music. It's music making. And I always see extracurricular as a way to feed back into my classroom. And then in the classroom, they can learn a little bit more and get a little bit more interest. And then they can turn that into the interest for extracurricular. So I'd just be interested to know your thoughts, Jen, on how the extracurricular clubs could be perceived in certain subjects. Should we be worried about just using those as just after school daycare or just a little bit of babysitting? Or do we really need to go, do you know what, this money is for a really important cause? Yes, in some ways looking at the additional skills, the soft skills, but they're still really important in some subjects. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that.
I feel like some time ago, maybe around 2016, 17, sometime around there was something about extending the school day. There was an initiative about, do you remember that? An initiative about extending the school day. And I in terms of the around the clock care for young people who have to get to school earlier and have to leave school a little bit later. And I remember being a bit concerned about that at the time. Well, who's going to deliver that? But actually, it was well managed. Money was put into breakfast clubs, and actually young people need breakfast, and it was impactful. It was good. It was positive for the children. So we don't necessarily need to be skeptical or negative about this, because actually I do feel like that was managed well. The after schools, can't remember what they put in place for that, but it certainly wasn't me who was running the extra clubs as far as I know, unless it was done by stealth. I think that in terms of bolt-on extracurricular activities, if I'm going to be honest, it's not something I thought about prior to this point. So you've asked me now, and I'm just thinking right here, right now. Don't hold me to it, but I feel like as a bolt-on, that's not the way you want to plan something so that it has longevity and a long-lasting impact. If an activity is run for a short period of time and it creates interest and it gets young people to engage where they previously weren't doing so, and it gets them off of their devices, I think that's a good thing. You get to see who's interested. Children talk all the time about wanting a taster lesson. Can I have a taster lesson? Can I try it out first? Can I try before I buy? Poor parents having to fork out for musical instruments only to find that the clarinet's been put down after 4 weeks. I don't want to play it anymore. It's too difficult. I don't want to do it. I do too much practice. So actually, tasters and just trying something, I don't think is a bad thing. But let's plan for something that's a bit longer lasting. So I think allowing tasters could be a really good way in, just to see who is actually interested in what. But then I think there needs to be a plan past. It's a 3-year funding period, right? So 3 years is quite a long time. 3 years is quite a long time to show impact and to show to plan for what you want to see from the young people, and they can present the work. They can even at the end of year 2 going into year 3, they can become mentors to younger people in that same discipline. So you can do a lot. I think taster, I'm not averse to the idea of a taster, to be honest with you, but I think there also needs to be some longer term planning. That's what I think about that one.
Yeah. And not only for musical instruments, but the money could also go towards sporting equipment as well, because that costs a lot. So if you're doing many sports, let's say cricket, that could be very, very pricey in terms of what you need to do. And again, you buy the stuff, and after 4 weeks, say, I'm not really interested in it now. There's a lot of money to waste in terms of that one.
Correct.
So perhaps having for schools or hubs to buy in, or to use that money to buy in equipment as tasters or loaners. So you could say, right, well, if you want to give this a go, have this for a month, see how you get on. You don't get on with it, that's fine. You can return it back. If you do, keep it on a longer term loan, and then try and work out some funding in that way. So just reading the comments here, there's a few I can't show because it got a little bit silly here, but I just want to say to Sarah A, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I really, really do appreciate it. Before we go on, we do need to have another announcement for our sponsors at AQA. As AQA knows, as we know, the teachers are the real experts in the classroom. Yes, we are. That's why they work closely with teachers like you, AQA, combining insights with their assessment expertise to create resources, tools, training, guidance that generally make a difference. They're the UK's most chosen assessment organisation. We run AQA, I have to say here as well, not a promotion to them. I'm just saying that we run AQA in terms of my exam board. So chances are you already know their work. And as we head into a new school year, AQA are focused on helping teachers feel supported and ready. If you want to find out more about how they work with teachers like yourselves, just head over to their website and search for AQA. We work with the experts. So in my career, I started working in the state school, and then I've been working in 2 independent schools. So I like to feel my perspective is I've seen both sides in terms of the extracurricular provision. And I will say that independent schools, yes, they do get the funding because they are privately funded, but at the same time, the onus on running extracurricular is on the teacher itself. So it's all self-contained, but then there are pressures and stresses on that. At any given moment, I think I was running 7 clubs on top of my full timetable, on top of doing the master's program, on top of doing boarding duties. So don't ask me how I did it. I did it nonetheless. I loved it. It was amazing. However, there are 2 things that I thought of. Number one, how incredibly privileged I am to have this opportunity to be running these extracurricular programs, and for my department at the time to say, I need this equipment and I need X amount. Is it okay? Should be fine. And I got that. But at the same time, the pressures on teachers like me were huge, because we obviously had to run these clubs because we wanted to increase the buy-in. We wanted to give those students an opportunities that we have. Now, in the state sector, I understand for majority, I don't want to say all, that running these, or at least finding the time to run these, are going to be a massive issue. So going back to if we had the keys against this, Jen, what could schools do, and what could local hubs do in terms of working with multi-academy trusts and schools? What could they do to, first of all, ease the pressure of teachers and schools running these extracurricular on top of what they do? And second of all, how could they instill a culture of extracurricular? Because I'd imagine some schools, if they haven't had opportunities for extracurricular, and all of a sudden they're like, we've got this money and we've got this time after school or whatever it is, how do you instill that culture whereby parents or students will buy into it and go, oh, we've got this amazing thing now? What would you potentially do?
Yeah, I like what you mentioned about parents there at the end, because the marketing of whatever's going to be happening is critical in this internet age that we're in. Um, it's fine to have an offer, but people need to know what's on offer. So we need to make sure that whatever is happening, whatever the schools and the hubs get together and pull together and think about offering, is it needs to be marketed and shared. But I think, rolling back as I like to do, let's go back to the beginning of that. Consulting the schools. First of all, the hubs need to music hubs in the from the lens of music specialism, but from the other specialisms which don't have hubs. I know that can be a bit of a sore point. The other art, DT, they don't drama, they don't have hubs. But within their, let's say, subject networks, hopefully regionally they have subject networks, let's say, there needs to be some conversation about what's actually needed. You will hear that that's been a bit of a thread from me, a running thread from me, is the teachers informing what's going to happen, because it is the teachers who are meeting with those children weekly, talking with those children, who the children are coming to at lunchtime and saying, Miss, Sir, can I do this? Can I access practice room? Can I do that? When's football starting? When's netball starting? Whatever it is. And so the teachers need to be consulted, I would say, on what the offer is that the hubs can pull together. I think hubs or subject network leads within multi-academy trusts, or whoever it is, regional network leads for subjects, they need to be thinking about not only what the schools identify as the need, but then thinking realistically about, as you say, how to sustain the offer, make sure that they're putting the right people in place. They need to be willing to reach out to schools who are not already interacting with them, because I think that's a huge issue that does need to be potentially, I could say, solved, or at least we start to scratch the surface of that issue. There are schools that are quite they function quite well already. They're running a lot of activities. Maybe a school is part of a multi-academy trust, and maybe there's a centralised team that offer something for drama across the trust, let's just say. But there's always going to be schools that are on the periphery, the anomalies, the ones that don't get involved. And I think those are the ones where we need to see what's really going on for those young people. So it's finding out what the offer should be. It's being willing to hold those conversations. I know everybody's tight for time, and we want to think about teacher and partner well-being. You know, we want to think about everyone's well-being. Ultimately, we're employed to provide fantastic opportunities for young people alongside the teaching that we're delivering. So, you know, we need to be willing to give a bit of time to those conversations to find out what really needs to be on offer. Once we've thought about the staffing and resources, make sure the best people are going in to deliver the programmes in whatever discipline it is. Make sure the young people have got what they need, like you just spoke about, the cricket whites, the instruments, whatever it is. Make sure they've got the resources to participate in the activity properly. And then I always say you've got to do some quality assurance and make sure that it's having an impact. But I want to see whoever the partners are that potentially going to benefit from this 22.5 million, make sure they're actually talking to the schools that don't usually engage, or the ones even within a school, the young people that usually miss out. That's where we've got to probably start, I would say. Get people having conversations, get a network meeting together. I'm big on teacher networks. I think teacher networks, I know you are as well, Mike. You know, we see the value of them, and that can be the thing that keeps you going, knowing that you're going to get together with a group of people and talk about what's working for you, what's not working so well, and problem solve. Go via a teacher network and actually find out who needs more support.
At AQA, we work with the UK's largest teacher network to shape the future of assessment. With teachers for students, we ask questions today that matter tomorrow.
Get a head start on your fresh start with Bloomsbury Education. With 30% off all our books till the end of September, this back-to-school sale is your chance to stock up on CPD titles, classroom resource banks, lesson ideas, and practical solutions to every teacher's pain points. Browse titles on sale from the Like a Ninja series, The Week Junior, and Let's Talk Picture Books. Perfect for the new school year. From leadership to inclusivity and maths to mental health, Bloomsbury Education has books for every step of your teaching journey. Welcome back to school at bloomsbury.com/back-to-school sale.
Over 7,500 primary schools are already using Capel Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to capelprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got another comment from Sarah A, who mentions getting involved with as many organizations such as the football organizations, the big national organizations to do with the arts. I think having that conversation, so starting the network within the local community, but then also branching out to the more established one, saying, look, we've got this funding or we've got this, we're looking at implementing this, how can you help us with this? Once that's all sorted, all right, you then spread it to the school community. It's on at this time, it's going to be amazing. We've got these opportunities to go here, to play at this fixture here, to do whatever it is. And once you kind of create a little bit of a buzz to say, do you know, we've got an opportunity to do something amazing, you grow it organically in that way, so to speak. Another shout out to Hatchet Learning as well for those who have just joined us. This show is brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning, publishers of professional development around the world, and they provide professional books, resources that offer great teaching and learning in schools. So do level up your professional development today and visit Hatchet Learning, www.hatchetlearning.com, to explore the full range of titles. Right, so we're approaching the last 5 minutes of this chat. I wanted to focus on key takeaways. So aspects in terms of what we could do, basically, advice in terms of how we can go around this. I was making a couple of notes on this, and I was just kind of thinking, again, if I had the keys to this, what would I do? Starting small, I think having 30-minute to an hour clubs a week would be advantageous. So just, don't start too big, kind of easing nice and naturally. You can also, as you mentioned about the buy-in for students and parents, release a survey. So, put out a survey saying, we've got this. What are your thoughts on this? So gauge the kind of temperature from the community. Easy to launch clubs, quick, easy wins, book club, coding, debate, gardening, if there is outdoor areas in there, I think are absolutely easy wins, aren't they? Because you have everything there. Really explore, like you mentioned before, really explore the personal interests of the students, and just kind of, in any organization and in any school, you're going to have that, aren't you? You're going to have those different interests, so to speak. Senior leaders, absolutely get them involved, really get their supports in there as well. Chances are, if they can see their students in your subject area thriving, doing something that you've set up, that's only going to be a win from that aspect. So really get their support. If there are people out there that work in schools that produce newsletters, weekly newsletters, monthly newsletters, whatever it is, put all of those successes of those clubs into the newsletter. Even if you started it, we've got this amazing gardening club, run by Miss Hurst. It's amazing. It's Wednesday after school. We're this term we've grown strawberries or whatever it is, and have the pictures. Like, really make a big song and dance about it. and just really advertise it on the newsletters and social medias. I put down collaboration. So you mentioned collaborating. Absolutely, really collaborate with not only the staff within the school, but the people with outside of your organization, so to speak. And if at all possible, if there's any links with other schools in your area, so multi-academy trust, I'm sure they're going to have that network anyway. They're going to have a collection of schools nearby. Maybe do some joint ventures and just have aspects in there, which I think would be really, really good. And then I guess if it's not too paperwork heavy, or if it doesn't necessarily add to anyone's time, maybe make almost like a summative, maybe a formative measuring. Maybe have something where you're looking in, sending out questionnaires. How are you getting on with this? And then, rather than, like you said at the beginning, measuring the whole impact over 3 years, so the government will obviously look at that and go, how has it gone? I think for people running these extracurricular clubs, they could look at their own and say, right, well, where's been my impact in terms of what I've done? What could teachers do to set up these clubs? Is there any other tips that you could have add to that at all in terms of this?
Not sure that my sort of summary thoughts are additional, but the key things for me, for teachers, I've spoken a lot about this. I would love for teachers to start the thinking now and to start diagnosing what is it that's missing. What would I love in an ideal world, as to coin Mike's phrase, as he says, if I had the keys, what would I do? Start thinking now about what you'd love to be able to offer that you perhaps are not in a position to right now. I think, as you mentioned, getting your leadership team on board, start the conversations now, because we know that something's coming. We don't know exactly what the something is. So start the conversation now about what you'd love to see. Be brave and have that conversation, because ultimately no head teacher's going to, want anything other than for the offer to their students to be as rich as it can be. I think the thing that limits the offer often is just funding. So as we're going to have that funding, I'm sure they'll be really keen to hear from you guys as to what you'd love to be delivering. And then making sure that the access is equitable. Think about who doesn't usually get the access, and speak to those children. I think you mentioned this just now, Mike, but consult those young people. Consult them on what they would like. We know what would be good for them. Also, your extracurricular offer can link to the curriculum. There's, we're talking about fun activities and taster activities and all these things, but in actual fact, it can link to your curriculum, and it can link directly to enhancing student outcomes by giving time and space to things that you wouldn't necessarily normally have the time and space to do. But yeah, talk to the young people about what they want, and just start planning now, so that when we do get the messaging on what this is going to look like in real terms, we're ready to go and we can make the best of it. And be thinking about, finally, the young people sharing their impact story. Might mention newsletters. Newsletters are great. We really want the young people to say, this is what the impact was for me. This is why I want to do this again next year. This is why you should run this club again for us, miss. This is what it's meant to me. And, let's hope we see the knock-on effect with improved mental health, less devices, more uptake of our subjects at Key Stage 4. That's what we want to see. Redress the balance a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very exciting. When I first heard the announcement, I generally thought, finally, what's taking you so long? I understand various financial issues in terms of what's going on at the moment with education are a factor. Also as well, the extracurricular aspect is not necessarily a hot topic at the moment. However, it's really, really good that we are getting noise from any government that we're getting this funding. It's great that the funding is being distributed, or at least the noise, the information around it is is to do with as many subjects as possible. I'm sure, like you, Jen, have come about it because of the various posts or feed on my feed in terms of what I use for my social media. I get a lot of the music-focused websites that I subscribe to have put this in there. So it's great. It means that they're channeling this news in terms of the arts and for music, which is great for someone like myself. I'm sure yourself, it's almost a case of great, we've got this funding, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to do some wonderful work with it. I was also reaching out to a couple of people who run music hubs locally in the Southwest and elsewhere, and I kind of reached out for their thoughts, and again, they're very, very excited about it. They mentioned that it can secure funding and it can secure employment for a lot of the people who work with the hubs as well, from a point of view that it will ease the pressure on local governments to kind of fund them, which is absolutely amazing. But they share they kind of share our, not concerns, but like the questions in terms of, that's great. When is it going to be rolled out? What is it going to look like? What regions are going to get the money? Is it going to be, dare I say, a postcode lottery? Are regions in and around the bigger cities in the southeast and whatnot, are they going to be getting the funding? And then the peninsula, what's the word? The regions outside of the southeast, are they going to get less of the funding? And I think these are all things that we need to be considering. These are all things that we need to certainly take note of. But I mean, nonetheless, we all need to be advocates, and we need to fight for our, for this. If we're listening to this and we're feeling that the funding isn't fair in terms of where your area is or constituency, then I think we should all need to fight the good fight and basically say, where's our extra funding? We need this. Do certain regions need more than others? Perhaps they do. I can tell you now, in terms of working in a rural school, in a rural setting, we absolutely need it. And I think, if anything, I'd love it if more of the funding would come to our region, because there's loads of people who run music hubs in different counties around here that could have, could do wonders with it. And what they've messaged me, they've got loads of potential. Before I say thank you to Jen for being my guest, I just want to give another read out to AQA, who, as I mentioned before, they are committed to helping us with assessment expertise, creative tools, training, and guidance that they really know makes a difference. They are the well-known and the most chosen assessment organization, and they really they're focused on helping teachers feel supported. So if you want to find out more about how they're working with teachers, then like us here, just head over to their website and search for AQA. We work with experts. Jen, thank you ever so much for your insight. It's been absolutely amazing. You've just been saying loads of things here, and my mind is just being like turning with all these wonderful ideas. So I really appreciate your expertise and your knowledge, Jen. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Bless you, bless you. And for everyone else, we will be back again in a fortnight's time. Remember, at the new time of 2:30 on Saturday. So please make sure that you join in for this one. Until then, I wish you all a wonderful and a magnificent weekend, and also a wonderful couple of weeks. And I'll look forward to seeing you all in a fortnight's time. Thank you very much, everyone.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.